This is our update for March the 30th, 2016. The equity markets have rallied very strong as of late from their February support level here. I'm not a major buyer here. I don't like this action. I think we are just going to peek our head up above. We'll probably make a new high just so the media can scream new highs. This will be a trap, I believe. The RSI is overbought. All the other indexes are not participating to the degree that the narrow capitalized Dow, it's only 30 stocks. You have to bear that in mind. And it has, it's the one that everybody watches, though. So it's kind of unfair, really, when you think about it. Anyway, here we have the VXX, and of course it continues to fall. This is a mirror image of the VIX, which is the fear index, and the VIX has hit a very, very low level here, which means nothing can go wrong. There's nothing but good priced into this market. Nobody's, afraid at all. This is not a good situation to be in. You have to be ready to pull the trigger here when things get ugly, and I believe they will. Sell in May and go away may be very true again this year, except it may come a bit earlier based on what I'm seeing in these charts. Well, let's take a look at Apple. When it was down here, I said it was going to go up to 110 in that range. Here we are. Today we hit 110.42, close at 109.56. It backed off a little bit from the high. It did have two gaps here. It gapped up here from 102, and then it gapped up here again from 107. So to me, that's, perhaps a runaway gap and then an exhaustion gap here. Definitely overbought in the short term. The RSI is way up here. Let's look at the Russell 2000. The Russell 2000 has not risen to the degree that the Dow has. This is a much wider range of stocks. This is 2,000 stocks. This is small cap stocks. And these guys generally got hurt very, very badly earlier in the year. And now it only looks like it's recovered maybe 60% of it. But you really have to look under the hood to see what's going on in the markets. The indexes don't tell the story. The indexes are what the media uses to tell the story, but they don't really tell the story. You get the real story when you own some stocks and you get your mutual fund statements and you see how much, junk that they load them up with, and those are the ones that get cut in half or lose 75–80% of their value. You don't hear too much about those. Now we have the NASDAQ. Sorry about the title missing at the top here, but this is basically the NASDAQ 100. And once again, it's just peeked its head up above over the 200-day. It's running into some gap resistance right here, which is a little scary. And the fact that it's still a good ways off its highs here, its ultimate highs. So, I think this is a good time to, take some bearish positions here. Buy some puts, do some shorting. You could do a fairly low risk trade here, I believe. With the upside, you could put your stops just marginally above the highs. I wouldn't go too close to them. I'd give it some breathing space here because, they can force this thing up to fool everybody, and they do a very good job of that. So you should never underestimate the power of market makers and the plunge protection team. Here we are, the S&P 500, same thing. It didn't even really take this out yet. Backed off from its high today. Note the MACD in all these cases is very close to converging. The RSI, once again, is up nearing the overbought level. Here we have the Gold Miners Index. This one, the steam has come out of gold a little bit here, which is a good thing. It's taken some pressure off short term, and it's given the market a bit of time to digest its gains. You still have a healthy move up here in the 50-day average. Yes, we could get a bit of weakness here. I don't think it's time to bail on the golds by any stretch. I don't think I'd be going short the golds here. I don't think that's a good idea. We have this unemployment non-farms payroll coming out on Friday. who's to say what that could be? They always say they have these strong job numbers and all this stuff. Well, I don't know. If you go to the States and you see the number of homeless people and the number of unemployed people hanging around doing nothing, and the fact that they have a serious graying of the population, not to mention, numerous healthcare issues, and guys are living in their parents' basements for the next 20 years, it's hard to see how this economy can really get a lot of traction. And I also might mention that Yellen yesterday came out and said that interest rate hike is now not a foregone conclusion like it was believed leading up to the results of that meeting and testimonial, whatever it was. And basically, one guy made a good comment. He said, there's too much talk, there's too much of these guys, these Fed governors running around saying that there's scope to raise interest rates, and all this stuff, and they're telegraphing all this hawkish comment that the markets are kind of very unsure on what to do. And the next thing you know, Yellen comes out and says, "Oh no, that's not going to happen." So I have a hard time, finding credibility now with the Fed. Maybe that's their intention. I'm really not sure, but all I know is they should just maybe, close their mouth for a while and just let the market decide what's going on. ABX Toronto, once again, it's holding support quite nicely up in this upper range up here. So there's nothing. I mean, I've said before that gold could go down to 1166. That's a big could. Okay, it seems to be finding very good support here at 1200. The other day it hit 1206. It bounced up to 1243 on the Yellen News. Today it's trading at around 1225. It probably has, it seems to have quite good support above 1200. And if it did dip below, I believe that would be a very good buying opportunity. And I have Detour Gold. I mean, this thing is just basically trading sideways here. There's nothing too bearish about what's going on here. I mean, you actually have the MACD looking like it's going to converge to the upside here. A notable drop-off in volume on the sell-off. Yesterday was a pretty strong update. You had a pickup in volume. Today it consolidated a bit of those gains. Volume dropped back. I mean, this is a healthy technical picture. I see nothing wrong with this name. Then we have Goldcorp, and it's a little choppy. It's not typical Goldcorp action, but once again, it's holding up in the upper range here. I mean, this doesn't look like a situation where gold has given from 1283 down to 1206 range. I mean, these stocks haven't really, reacted very negatively, even though the metal has been a lot more volatile than some of these stocks. So it's almost as like they're just saying, you know what, we're just going to, invest in here, and we're just going to hold, and the insiders and the smart money, I don't think they're liquidating. I think they're just holding tight and probably buying on dips. McEwen Mining, another very interesting situation. This thing is at much higher level. You've had the volume drop off here very considerably, as the stock has just traded sideways here for most of the month of March. What can happen here is you can have these situations where it'll do this and then it might do a little downward, just enough to scare. And that's the day you want to be doing your buying, I think. If we get that. There's no guarantees with this, okay? What I see here is a healthy consolidation, sideways action. Stock should be bought. NDM, now this is an interesting situation. These guys have the world's largest gold deposit. Now, for a stock that's trading at 44 cents on 87,000 shares, obviously not a lot of people know about this situation. Well, this was a name that was talked about a lot back in 2007 and 8. They had a deal in place with Anglo-American Gold, and they were going to help them develop this project and put, I think it was a very hefty amount of cash in there. Now, of course, these days you have the junior mining sector, which is starving for cash. It's not easy to get financing because of the low gold price. All that'll change when gold continues to rise, which I believe it will. And at that point, interest will come into this name because there's 106 million ounces in the ground in Alaska. And they're fighting with the environmental people. They've put a lot of money into this thing, a lot of studies. I'm sure they're talking to people all the time. And it's just a matter of time. So I think for 44 cents, I think you take a flyer on this because they have the world's richest gold deposit. This is a serious deposit. This is not a cow patch or something like that. This is a well-documented, serious deposit. I think the downside is extremely limited here. I think you need to buy this one and put it in your back pocket. It might take 3 years. It might take 5 years. Who cares? When it reaches the point where the gold market is, getting much more bullish, once it takes out its recent high and moves up to 1350, I think you'll see this stock up over $1 very fast. And it's obviously it's contingent on the gold price, as most junior miners are. But the patterns of the stocks and everything tell me that these things are under accumulation. And look at the volume down here, by the way. Okay, so you have a nice little pattern. You have a declining area here into this area where the volume just drops right off. And then you have it dropping right down where it basically cuts the stock in half from this level here. Then you have a pickup in volume. Now coming out of the other side, you have much more volume. On this move here where it started to move up, you had a nice pickup in volume. You had one day here we had almost 1 million shares. So I think this thing is... the reason why there's probably not a lot trading down here is there's a lot of people that are just simply holding on to this. They're holding out for the big payoff when it comes. And I believe it'll come. I believe, maybe a few years. But, this could be, if they build a mine up there with that kind of resources in the ground, this is a serious, serious amount of gold. And not to mention silver, all kinds of other strategic metals. This is a big deposit, the world's largest, folks. You should pay attention to this. Northern Dynasty. I'm going to show you a little longer chart on this Northern Dynasty. Yeah, it looks ugly. This is what happens. They like to run these things down. But once again, I think we're in a bottoming phase here. Look at the volume compared to all this. This is interesting. And it's been hugging that 50-week moving average. I think this thing goes. It's just a matter of time. And there'll be some interest in there. Nobody's going to let 106 million ounces of gold stay in the ground. That's just not going to happen. Especially when the price rises. As the price rises, the interest of this thing will catch fire. Like, man, you're going to have to throw gas on it. I tell you, it's going to really move, I think. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Anyway, I bought a fair hefty chunk of this, and I'm just going to sit pretty on this, and I don't really care what it does in the short term. Thank you for listening. It's been fun. We'll see you Sunday. Thank you.